Welcome to the New Life Ministries podcast. In today's passage, we see Saul increasing in anger, jealousy, fear, and hatred towards the young warrior David. We notice how he misinterprets people's words. We watch him create awful plans to hurt others. When anger gets a hold of us, it distorts us. We don't understand accurately, and we start to act out our misguided reality. It's awful, but it is very human. Let's ponder a different way together.
Well, today we're going to look at 1 Samuel 18, page 439. If you have a New Living Translation giant print Bible, those of you online, those of you watching the recording, good morning. I'm glad you've joined us. How's your anger? How are you at expressing your anger? I grew up, what? Professional. Good answer. I grew up seeing anger not expressed well. So I struggle with expressing my anger, and I tend to suppress it, which is not a great option. I was on a canoe trip in September, and we were expecting to do 3 very short portages in a row. And we had done one, and it was like 100 feet, so it was nothing. We got to the second one, expecting the same as the first. So I grabbed my gear with my hands instead of packing it properly into the pack, and I just started off. My hands were full, and the path was not short. And it just kept going and going, and the carabiners and the straps were starting to cut into my hand, cutting off the circulation, and I was getting mad that this was not what I expected. And then the trail kept getting smaller and smaller, and the branches were grabbing my stuff. And so, when you're trying to carry something, and then, it gets caught on a branch, you're trying to keep going. And then the path ended in the middle of nowhere. Like it walked up to a bunch of shrubs and stopped. And I could see the river over to my right, and it was about a 5 or 6 foot drop, a little cliff, and then not really any shore. Like that can't be the way down, but there was nothing else, nowhere to go. And it was far enough that to just jump would be dangerous. And my anger was building. So I put my stuff down and I walked back to see if I had missed the path. And the path didn't turn off. There was nothing that even suggested maybe perhaps the path could turn off. This was the path. And I thought to myself inside, this is a safe place to get angry. It's only my camping buddy with me, and he's way back. And I know the anger's building, so I kind of let myself get angry. And then the anger got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I knew I was tired from several days on the trip, but I could feel myself sliding into the red zone. Because for me, anger breeds anger. If I express my anger, it just keeps getting bigger. And I was losing my sense of what was going on. I was losing my sense of what to do. And I could feel like everything was spilling and I couldn't stop it. And Pete showed up and I was able to articulate, I've either lost the path or the path ends. I'm furious and I don't know what to do. And when you're so angry, like you're just kind of on vibrate? And Pete's great because he has his own anger, but it's different than mine. So he was like, okay, we'll take the cliff. And we worked the cliff and got in the water and kept going. But for me, it was that, oh man, I don't know how to do my anger very well. So today's passage that we read, I noticed Saul's anger. And I was pondering, what does this passage show us about anger? And could Saul have responded differently? So in the passage, it's very much David's on one path and Saul is on another path. And a lot of it's about Saul, but indirectly it's actually about David. And you'll hear it when we read it. We're going to focus on Saul's story in it. So let me offer a prayer and we'll pick it up. Father, thank you that this morning we have spent so much time praising you and giving honor to you and giving thanks for how you are active in our life on just a day-to-day basis. As we look at this passage, help us to see what you want us to see. Help us to see what Jesus teaches and draw us to be more like you. Draw us to the way of Jesus, that we would grow in our discipleship and we would have new options when anger shows up. So please help us and bring glory to yourself. Amen. So 1 Samuel 18, this story picks up right after the chapter last week where David killed Goliath. And then at the very end, he was talking to Saul, and the story just keeps going. So verse 1. After David had finished talking with Saul, he met Jonathan, the king's son. There was an immediate bond between them, for Jonathan loved David. From that day on, Saul kept David with him and wouldn't let him return home. And Jonathan made a solemn pact with David because he loved him as he loved himself. Jonathan sealed the pact by taking off his robe and giving it to David, together with his tunic, sword, bow, and belt. Whatever Saul asked David to do, David did it successfully. So Saul made him a commander over the men of war, an appointment that was welcomed by the people and Saul's officers alike. When the victorious Israelite army was returning home after David had killed the Philistine, women from all the towns of Israel came out to meet King Saul. They sang and danced for joy with tambourines and cymbals. This was their song: Saul has killed his thousands, and David his 10,000s. This made Saul very angry. What's this? He said. They credit David with 10,000 and me with only thousands? Next, they'll be making him their king. From that time on, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. The very next day, a tormenting spirit from God overwhelmed Saul, and he began to rave in his house like a madman. David was playing the harp, as he did each day, but Saul had a spear in his hand, and he suddenly hurled it at David, intending to pin him to the wall. But David escaped him twice. Saul was then very afraid of David, for the Lord was with David and had turned away from Saul. Finally, Saul sent him away and appointed him as commander over 1,000 men, and David faithfully led his troops into battle. David continued to succeed in everything he did, for the Lord was with him. When Saul recognized this, he became even more afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he was so successful at leading his troops into battle. One day Saul said to David, "I'm ready to give you my older daughter, Merab, as your wife. But first you must prove yourself to be a real warrior by fighting the Lord's battles." For Saul thought, "I'll send him out against the Philistines and let them kill him rather than do it myself. Who am I and what is my family in Israel that I should be the king's son-in-law?" David exclaimed. "And my father's family is nothing." So when the time came for Saul to give his daughter Merab in marriage to David, he gave her instead to Adriel, a man from Meholah. In the meantime, Saul's daughter Michal had fallen in love with David, and Saul was delighted when he heard about it. "Here's another chance to see him killed by the Philistines," Saul said to himself. But to David he said, "Today you have a second chance to be my son-in-law." Then Saul told his men to say to David, "The king really likes you, and so do we. Why don't you accept the king's offer and become his son-in-law?" When Saul's men said these things to David, he replied, "How can a poor man from a humble family afford the bride price for the daughter of a king?" When Saul's men reported this back to the king, he told them, "Tell David that all I want for a bride price is 100 Philistine foreskins. Vengeance on my enemies is all I really want." But what Saul had in mind was that David would be killed in the fight. David was delighted to accept the offer. Before the time limit expired, he and his men went out and killed 200 Philistines. Then David fulfilled the king's requirement by presenting all their foreskins to him. So Saul gave his daughter Michal to David to be his wife. When Saul realized the Lord was with David and how much his daughter Michal loved him, Saul became even more afraid of him, and he remained David's enemy for the rest of his life. Every time the commanders of the Philistines attacked, David was more successful against them than all the rest of Saul's officers. So David's name became very famous. So if your initial response to some of that material is, "Ugh, that's disgusting," I think that's how you're supposed to respond. Never mind the conversation Jessica and I had this week about what would be a good PowerPoint image. So structurally, there's a lot going on in this passage, but here's the summary. Saul's son loves David. Saul's officers love David. The people love David. His daughter loves David. Everybody is turning away from Saul and loving this new guy. And Saul feels his kingdom slipping away. You know that feeling when everything you care about is being taken from you? Or somebody new shows up on the playground and everybody wants to be their friend and not your friend anymore? It's kind of that, but amplified. Saul's response, as I see it, is to fight and to destroy and cause harm. This is my life and my kingdoms and my plan, and I'm going to have my way, and I'm not letting go of my grip. So let's dig in. So right after David and Saul have had this talk last week, David is holding Goliath's head. He meets Jonathan. And there's this instant connection and love between them, which is not surprising because Jonathan's courage and trust in the Lord is just like David's. Like they're kindred spirits. And it says that Jonathan loved David and they made this pact or this covenant with each other. What's happening is that Jonathan is relinquishing his right to the throne of Israel. That's what's happening in this language. Jonathan gives him his robe, which would be ornate, gold, threading in it. The robe represents being the crown prince, being the heir to the throne. So the same word for robe was used 2 chapters ago when Saul tried to grab the corner of Samuel's robe, and it rips, and Samuel says, "Your kingdom will be torn from you." Robe and kingdom kind of go together. So Jonathan is giving the rights to be the next king to David. You will have the right. And then he gives him his weapons. So if you've seen Lord of the Rings, where Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli say to Frodo, "You have my sword, you have my bow, you have my axe," it's very similar. I give you my power, I give you my abilities and my strength to you and your mission. So Jonathan is willingly and freely submitting himself to David and whatever David's going to become. Because somewhere in this, Jonathan recognizes David has God's anointing. And he doesn't begrudge David because he loves David. He's like, man, this is the guy to be king. And then Saul, at the same time, like it's kind of interwoven in the story, keeps David closer. I'm not going to let you go home. And we don't know why. Might be control, might be watching over. I think Saul could see that his kingship is not going to go to Jonathan. John's giving it to David. And I could see him like, no. My family line, my family reputation, my legacy is going to go to that guy. So Saul starts to clench. David's success just keeps growing. He's made the commander over the men of war, and the officers love it. Finally, a good military leader. And Saul's power and esteem is sliding away. And when they return home after killing Goliath and the Philistines, the women sing this song. Saul has killed his thousands and David his 10,000s, which Saul finds insulting. Were the singers actually insulting him? Probably not. It's Hebrew parallelism. And in Hebrew poetry, one line is repeated but amplified in a second line. So they're just singing the way their poetry is done. And the nation doesn't know David's going to become king. They're just looking at Saul and his military victory and the armor bearer, and they're celebrating the whole thing. But Saul, out of his anger and his insecurity, he's getting angry because he sees the world through this lens of, I'm losing. Everything's being taken from me. And because everything he looks at is through this lens of, I'm losing, then people are threats, and David is a threat, and David is against him. And it shapes his reality. We do this all the time, where we come up with a way of seeing reality, and then we act on it. And by acting on it, we make it more real. And I bet if someone had come up to Saul and said, David's not actually a threat. He's actually helping you and he's building your reputation, Saul would have been like, oh no, David's against me. And in fact, in the next chapter, Jonathan tries this and tries to tell his dad, David's on your side. Oh no. We do this all the time. They hate me. They hate me. And so because I know they hate me, I'm going to behave hatefully towards them. And then they behave hatefully towards me. See, they hated me all along. We get this lens and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When we feel angry and we feel like we're about to lose something that matters to us, or even when we lose the hope of what will happen. Like, this is the desire I have for my life, and it's becoming clear that's not going to happen. We start to not see reality accurately. And that anger and that fear and the desire starts to blind us. And unfortunately, then we assign motivations to other people. They're doing this to me, and I know why. It's because in their heart, they think this about me. And we're not open to being corrected. So here's your correction. I have learned that almost always when I create a motivation for somebody, or when I watch one person talk about somebody else's motivation, almost always they're completely wrong. Like if you've come up with a reason why somebody else is doing something, just say to yourself, I'm quite likely wrong. Just say, because in the moment you won't believe it. But we get so blinded because of what we're losing. We can't see reality well anymore. Like Saul, who was not seeing things correctly. The next day, he hurls a spear at David's head while David's on the harp. Bum, bum, bum. He does it twice, which means Saul picked up the weapon, threw it at his head, missed, went, picked it up out of the wall, and threw it again. That's an anger tantrum. You ever seen a construction worker get mad and they pick up a hammer or a tape measure and they throw it against a wall? Yes. You ever seen them go get the hammer or the tape measure, come back and do it again? No. That's tantrum stuff. You ever seen the videos called left-handed anger? Have you seen one of these? It's a construction worker, and he's mad, he picks up his hammer, and the crew goes, left-hand anger, left-hand anger. So he puts the hammer in his left hand, and of course, we're all not coordinated, and the hammer drops 2 feet in front of him because we don't know how to throw that way. Saul is angry. He's having a tantrum, throwing a spear at this guy. So finally, Saul sends David away. Just get out of here. I'm going to put you in charge of 1,000 men. And the neighborhood would go, wow, what a great promotion. But we know Saul is afraid and desperate and is actually hoping that David gets killed in battle. And then Saul does this awful scheming with his daughters. When the oldest is about to be married, like on the wedding day, I'm going to get you to marry this other guy instead. And then his younger daughter, who loves David, he sends David out on this weird, perverted quest. One of the things we do as people is we imagine a situation, we come up with a situation where we will get what we need. If I could only have this happen, if this would happen, then I will get what I need. And then I will be at peace. And then I will be safe, or I'll be healed, or I'll be cared for, or I'll be revenged, or I'll be satisfied. Pick your word. So we create this fantasy. If I could only get this one thing, if I do this thing, then I'll be okay. And then that fantasy either spills into reality, it'll show up in our speech and in the start of our actions, or we bring it into reality. We try to make it come about. Most often, when your fantasy is spilling into reality, other people can see it really clearly. They can see what you're doing because they're not in that headset. They're not in that mindset. They can see what you're after and what you're doing. The better way, the easier way, the harder way is actually to present your needs to God and let him answer it. This is what I think will make my life better. Lord, could you provide it? And God is good, and he knows what is good for you. He knows what's best for your days. He knows how to bring about that goodness, and he also knows if that goodness is actually not good for you. And then he doesn't bring it. There's a couple of great talks on Genesis 3 that Tim Mackey's got out there with the Bible Project. And he talks about how, there's the tree, all the trees are good. And there's this tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which looks good, but it's not good. And how humans, we pursue what is good, but we don't always know what is good. And that some of what we think is good is actually not good. So we have to trust God to say, I know what you want, but it's actually going to hurt you, and I'm not going to give it to you. But that's not what Saul does. It says in verse 10, a tormenting spirit from God overwhelmed Saul. So this overwhelming spirit was first introduced back in chapter 16, right when the kingdom is torn away from him. And it reads in chapter 16:14, now the Spirit of the Lord had left Saul, and the Lord sent a tormenting spirit that filled him with depression and fear. So the tormenting spirit comes because Saul rejects the Lord's authority over him. It's consequence. And we don't know exactly what this tormenting spirit is. It might be a demon, but I read that back when this was written, 1000 BC, demonology was not actually a well-developed theology at that point in history. One of the commentaries I read said, it's quite likely, or it could possibly be, a foreboding sense that Saul is moving inescapably towards self-annihilation. And I quite like that. Saul understands, I've doomed myself, and I know it, and I just don't know how it's going to happen. All I know is trouble's around the corner. And that tormenting spirit, I have shipwrecked my life, and I can't get out of this shipwreck, might be the torment. If you read all of, I need to say this part, if you read all of Saul's story, it does sound like a mental illness. It does sound like bipolar, schizophrenia, like throw some words in there. But commentators are really clear, we don't have to diagnose this illness. Because this is not a chemical imbalance, this is not a psychological illness. This is something spiritual that the Lord has sent him because he rejected the Lord's authority. Like punishment would be another word. So this is about something God is doing. It's consequence. Which makes me wonder, what if Saul had confessed and apologized? Like what if he had just stopped and said, Lord, I have rejected your authority over me. I'm sorry. I don't think he'd have gotten the kingdom back, but the tormenting spirit might have left. But Saul doesn't do that. So Saul has gone from anger to fear to hatred, jealousy, suffering. He's lost his ability to perceive reality accurately. He has awful, violent outbursts, and he is thinking in twisted ways in how to get his needs met. He has become distorted. So Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, he says, you have heard that our ancestors were told, you must not murder. And if you commit murder, you are subject to judgment. But I say, if you are even angry with someone, you are subject to judgment. If you call someone an idiot, you are in danger of being brought before the court. And if you curse someone, you are in danger of the fires of hell. Anger is not how we were designed to be. It distorts us. And sometimes we encounter injustice and corruption, and it's appropriate to be angry in that situation. It's fine. It's very specific. But sometimes, and you've seen this, anger becomes a default setting. It just becomes how someone relates to the world. I'm just angry. It's my default posture. That's not fine. And you might say to yourself, I can be angry as long as I don't kill anyone or as long as I don't really hurt anyone. Jesus would disagree. Anger might be easy, and expressing anger might feel natural, But sometimes our perspectives and our behaviors need to change because of what we encounter in Scripture and what Jesus teaches us. Like sometimes, regardless of how easy it is or how natural it is, we have to say, this is not the way of Jesus. This is not how he wants me to be. And so one step in that solution is to want your anger to go away. Like, Lord, I am angry way too much. Lord, I don't want to be angry like this all the time. Can you please remove this from me? Like, the first step is to want the anger to go and to pray that regularly. And if you're praying for your anger to go, the Lord will bring you through a journey that will expose all kinds of things and heal deep wounds, etc., etc. Go through that journey. But the first step is to ask God for help. And the second step, or a second step, is to learn to say, I'm sorry. I apologize. Please forgive me. And I kind of want to practice that with you today. If you could all just say, I'm sorry. Just say it. I'm sorry. I apologize. Please forgive me. I apologize. Please forgive me. Because sometimes we have no experience saying those actual words. And we think, well, I apologize all the time. Did you say the words? I'm sorry. It's okay to practice that. So what if, I'm going to end with this, Saul had relented? Instead of anger and fear and hatred and suffering, what if he'd relented? Because the Lord is with David. And all the ugliness and anger, all the ugly behavior and anger that Saul is expressing, none of it is changing the Lord's plan for David. And what we see in the passage is everything that Saul intends for harm ends up blessing David, because the Lord is with David. In your anger, you cannot stop what God intends. And you'll notice that David didn't really do anything to get all the blessings that he got. God brought them on. So David got a best friend, and he got a wife, and he's captain of the guard, and he's beloved by the people. He didn't do anything. He just received God's blessing. The Lord blesses. What if Saul had relented? So before we talk about this passage, I want to give you a moment to speak to the Lord, to pray quietly, if you need to actually talk with the Lord about anger. Because maybe there's a conversation between you and God on what's making you angry. Maybe you've lost, or you feel like you're losing, or there's resentment or injustice, but it's getting too much of a grip. And I just want to give you a moment to say that to Jesus. Because if I say, this afternoon, make sure you go do that, well, this afternoon you'll take a nap and you'll forget. And maybe you realize your anger has become how you see and relate to the world, and you want that to change. So I'm just going to give you a chance to talk with Jesus on your own, confess if you need to, ask for help if you need to. So I'm going to start a prayer. I'll give you some silence, and then we'll move into discussing. Father, this is like speaking to the choir. I know that I don't work my anger well, and I have much to learn. And Lord, I know how easy it is for loss, and even the fear of loss can distort reality. I know how imagination and fantasy can create ideas of how to get our needs met. Lord, anger can just distort us. And I know, Jesus, that you are really clear. Anger's not the way. So as we pray, Father, for each of us, if there's something you would like us, if you'd like to bring something to our attention that we can bring back to your attention, would you speak to us that this day would not proceed without reflecting well on this? So Lord, in this time of silence, please speak and please lead. Father, thank you that we can surrender to you. Thank you that we can ask for forgiveness, and that when we ask for forgiveness in prayer or confession, you say, you are forgiven. Thanks for that confidence. Please help us to be true in a truer way, a reflection of Jesus, and that our character would be as Jesus is. Thanks. Amen. So let's talk about this passage. What catches your attention in this? What sparks your interest?
Oh man, I was just thinking, I was kind of looking back at the last time I was really frustrated, really angry. And it seems that when I'm able to kind of catch my breath and put down my anger and look at it from an objective point, I don't know that there's a whole lot of times that I've been frothing angry where I've been in the right. Actually, I can't think of any that I've been in a frothing anger, that I've been following what God wanted. And it struck me listening to the story of David and Saul today that you really have to be careful, because often you'll end up facing God on the wrong side of the battle lines.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
We put ourselves in the role of God's enemy at that point. God doesn't use that anger in the way that we use anger. We use anger to get our own way, to have things happen the way that we expect them to happen. God seems to use anger to bring people back into communion with Him, and not the way that we use anger. He's angry, and yet He still does things in a rational way, in a move forward way, in a bring people back to Him way. We use anger to chase ourselves into a corner often. It kind of got me thinking, how do I stop myself before I get to that point of being like outrageously angry? We all experience anger, and if we're calm enough, we can reflect on it and we can say, okay, what actually caused the anger, and go after the source of, am I feeling like I've been disrespected?
Yep.
Is it a pride thing? Is it a I fear for my future thing of I don't trust the outcome to God because somebody's done something wrong and this is irreparable, which it never is. God works with, you're in this situation, do as I would do and watch the good happen. When we say, no, it's about me, we tend to get frustrated and angry, and yeah.
Especially if we feel powerless, eh? Because if you feel like you've got some power, then it's easier to talk a bit rationally. And God has all the power. We're with God. But when you feel powerless, ooh.
There's anger, and then there's trust in God. Those two have a hard time coexisting. So the solution to anger, I think, is to a large extent trust in God. Think about the last time you were angry. If you had fully trusted God at that moment in time, that He would be in control, can the anger still exist?
Got to take George on a camping trip with me.
Yeah, I have some similar thoughts to George and Paul. I find it helpful. In English, we have the single word of anger, but anger can be an emotion, or anger can be a posture. And I find it helpful, am I feeling angry? I think it's important to admit that I'm feeling angry. And I don't have to angrily tell you that I'm feeling angry. I can tell you that I'm feeling angry right now. I can tell Christine, hey, I'm feeling angry right now, and I can tell her about what. So as an emotion, we don't want to suppress that anger because it will pop out somewhere else, like it'll balloon out somewhere else. But we also don't want to live with a posture of anger. And I think those are different things. So I often learn by distinctions. So I find that helpful. From a counseling perspective, anger is very often made up of two things: a goal and a barrier to that goal. So if you're encountering someone who's angry in relationship, you may want to inquire of, is there a goal that they aren't able to achieve, and is there a barrier to that? And that's something that I've learned through some counseling, and then that can be another lens to look at it through that can be helpful, which can help us in our relationships. A goal and then a barrier to that goal. Stephen Chapman wrote a book not only about the 5 languages of love, the 5 love languages, but the 5 languages of apology. People apologize differently, and people need to hear different words when being apologized to. Some people, all they need is to hear the words, "I'm sorry." That's all they need. Some people need to hear the words, "Will you please forgive me?" Some people need to hear, they don't care about those words. It's, what are you going to do differently next time? And so when someone's apologizing to you, they may be apologizing in a different language than you feel is authentic or legitimate. And so I'd encourage you to be gracious and to receive whatever apology that they are able to give in their language. And then when you apologize, maybe just consider, what do they need to hear? It may not be the first words that you want to use, but what's meaningful to them. And then hopefully that helps with the reconciliation, because words mean different things to different people. So those are some of the things that I have learned along my path, which maybe are helpful for you.
I really like that, because when you talk about what is the goal and what's the obstacle, what's the barrier to that goal, there's the third question of, am I the barrier? And if I'm not the barrier, then this anger is not about me, even if it's being directed at me. Because that's partly freeing, right? Otherwise, it can be like, what am I doing wrong? Or and you get that broken glass kind of. Yeah, that's great, Charles.
One of the questions that Christine and I have used in the past is, are you mad at me? No. Oh, well, all of a sudden,
You're off the hook.
now all of a sudden we're standing side by, okay, well, how
Right.
can I help you now?
Right, you're suddenly side by side instead of...
Right?
Yeah.
Or you are mad at me. Okay, well, then there's a conversation.
So one of the things I was thinking about this morning while you were talking, while I was getting my degree, we actually talked a lot about anger and what the root of anger is. And most of the time, it's an assignment of motivation. And so one of the tools that was really helpful, and I use with my kids, is what is the best possible motivation that this other person could have, regardless of what else is going on. This is all within you. So this person has done this thing. What's the best possible motivation? That's their motivation. You work from that until you know more information, because then you're standing with a posture of the worst case scenario, which is what your brain immediately goes to, is not the thing. This is the thing. And it's easier to work from the best possible perspective heading that way rather than the other direction, because getting back from here is not going to happen. It was funny, while you were talking, of course, we're thinking about Saul, but what must have been going on in that house? In that whatever kind of majestic structure that they all lived in. There was spears and violence and rage, and in our house we struggle with some mental illness things, and when things are rough, everybody is on edge, everybody's on tiptoes all the time. What a hard place to create friendships and new loves, and that just makes everything so much harsher. And it still happened. And so you can see God's hand on that, because that shouldn't have worked.
Yeah, I like that. Nice. Yeah, nice.
Thank you for listening to our podcast today. New Life Ministries is located in Winnipeg, Manitoba. You are invited to join our service in person or over Zoom. Please use the Contact Us link to send an email to the church office and request the address or Zoom link. If you would like to use these podcasts as part of your home church or local church gathering, you are free to do so. We do request that you let us know. If there is any other way that we can help you in your ministry, please send us an email.